Hello, my name is Tony. This is a film about destruction. Destruction of the self, destruction of others, destruction of the love object, destruction for destruction's sake. As such, the narrative catalysts it contains are often chaotic, whimsical, absurd, stupid even, beyond the conventional realms of reason and common sense, which has resulted in many a critic accusing it of being dumb, mindless, gratuitous, ill-conceived and unconvincing. And to a large extent, I'm sorry to say, they're not wrong. The central characters and their motivations, their behavioural responses and actions don't follow any recognisable logical pathways or rational thought processes. Instead, the way of blind nihilism is the way of all things here. Maybe that was the point, to make an implacably bleak and unrepentantly savage movie wherein no one of consequence wins or lives, and the ultimate pointlessness of human existence is the punchline to a sick cosmic gag. You know, like that joke. A man walks into a bar and says to the bartender, "What's the meaning of life, Joe?" The bartender replies, "There is no meaning, it's pointless. Now order a drink or fuck off and die." It's based on reverse existentialism or something, and it isn't funny. Maybe it's in the telling, what the fuck do I know? Not like I'm a fucking comedian, is it? Or is it? Oliver Reed is Frank Calder, leader of a large gang of outlaws in the Old West. They're travelling across country to somewhere to do something which is their last chance at making money and surviving. Where it is they're going and what it is they're going to do, I have no idea. It's left vague. Less than that even. It just isn't explained. Melissa Candice Bergen is the wife of cattle baron Brant Ruger, Gene Hackman. Ruger is a twisted sexual sadist. He's off on a 2-week hunting trip with 4 of his well-heeled friends. They're travelling first class on Ruger's private train, complete with a carriage full of prostitutes. Ruger has bought each man a present, $700 worth of rifle, the Sharps Borchardt Model Creedmoor 54 caliber with telescopic sights, accurate over distances up to 800 yards. Melissa burns time as a volunteer at the local schoolhouse. Calder's gang swoop down and kidnap her. Initially, you'd conclude this is some ransom gig, but it isn't. Calder has mistaken her for a real school teacher and wants her to teach him to read. Yep, you heard that right. Initially, he refuses to believe she is Ruger's wife, but that's going to change. When Ruger gets news of his wife's kidnap, he diverts the hunting party to track down and bag an altogether different prey, Calder and his men, and with their newfangled super rifles they have the advantage of remaining safely out of range and picking them off at leisure. It's a hunt, chase, kill western, but is it any good? On first viewing, in my early 70s market hall glory days, I got a really cool buzz from this film, felt it to be up there alongside Chateau's Land, but then I started to think about it in more depth, and the inherent flaws exposed themselves to me. And on repeat viewings over the ensuing years, and as I inevitably got older, the more it perplexed and bugged me and to some extent became a source of relative irritation. The hunting party has a lot going for it. I've mentioned on more than one previous occasion that I'll watch anything with Oliver Reed in it. Ollie Reed in his first western as a badass outlaw is something I wasn't going to miss out on. He certainly doesn't look out of place like Sean Connery before him did in Shalako, and the script does try to impose a more complex persona on his character than simply just another standard tough guy with a 6-shooter. He wants to learn to read because he can't, because it may lead to something better. How exactly? Who knows? Career change to librarian, bookkeeper, diarist, journalist, obituary columnist, town crier, whatever. Anyway, he's brooding, masculine, thuggish, and bristling with violent appeal and some smattering of emotional depth, which by now was Ollie's stock in trade as an actor. In movies, Candice Bergen frequently seemed to get a rough ride, excuse the pun, at the mercies of her male co-stars. She was like some sensually poised, statuesque sexual magnet for misogyny, routinely physically and psychologically traumatized and mistreated in general by the male of the species. She's put through the mill here with Calder's men fixing to gang rape her own husband physically abusing her in their marital bed, eventually raped by Calder, and generally being manhandled, smacked around and brutalized. Did producers of the day think, well, we need a beautiful woman we can degrade and victimize horribly in this picture? Candice Bergen, she'd be ideal. The result is she had some thankless roles, and this is one of them. She's even made to fall in love with her rapist, you know? Gene Hackman is one of the finest dramatic screen actors to ever emerge from Hollywood. His character Ruger is so vile and despicable, he does everything but twirl his fucking mustache to validate his villainous status. He forces rough sex upon his wife, he burns the flesh of an oriental prostitute with a cigar to get his kicks, he verbally trashes Melissa as damaged goods, he doesn't want her back, yet is so incensed that something he sees as a possession has been stolen from him, sets out to slaughter those responsible. He becomes obsessed, crazed by the pursuit of revenge. He will not or cannot stop, even when one of his friends is killed and the others gradually desert him. Channeling the same sort of malicious and mentally twisted depravity he would repeat later on in Prime Cut and Unforgiven, he's as unlikable a character as you're ever likely to encounter on screen. It's a fine cast, but the script written by Gilbert Ralston and William W. Norton lets them down, and lets them down badly. Ralston previously created the popular US TV show Wild Wild West. This is a definite departure from that. Norton went on to script several Burt Reynolds movies, The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, White Lightning and Gator, as well as Roger Corman's gangster exploitation actioner Big Bad Mama. It's not entirely down to them because the director Don Medford, a multiple US TV series hack, seems to be unsure of what type of film he's making, and falls back on the piecemeal utility of genre tropes and mood styles of the time, with little grasp of what makes revisionist westerns tick. A big plus is the score by Riz Ortolani, who delivers a very catchy spaghetti western-inspired main theme and some pacey background music. It was a British-American co-production shot in Spain, so it has that spaghetti vibe going on, whilst looking like a slightly poorer relative of the Wild Bunch. Spanish cinematographer Cecilio Panuaga was no stranger to westerns, having previously lensed Custer of the West with Robert Shaw in 1967 and 100 Rifles with Jim Brown, Burt Reynolds and Raquel Welch in 1969. His work here is fine, and the recent Blu-ray version I watched adds a complementary crisp and vibrant sheen to the grain and dust. There is graphic violence from the outset, and it's awesomely unpleasant. It starts with Frank and some of his men slaughtering a cow and gutting it, eating some of the flesh raw. This is intercut with scenes of Ruger physically abusing Melissa in their bed. Not sure what director Medford is attempting to say here, that butchering a bovine is the equivalent of perverse sexual debasement and sadism towards women. Lost on me, whatever though, it's unsettling. There is much spurting blood and some slow-mo when Calder's gang are picked off by sniper fire, most notably in a scene at a waterhole which turns into a mini Wild Bunch Ballet of Death adaptation. Medford cribs copiously from Peckinpah, but fails to engender the same poignant aesthetic that instilled a terrible emotion and beauty in that director's death scenes. Still, exploding heads, gaping bullet wounds and gushing claret are all present and correct, and executed with some style and finesse. Is the violence gratuitous as alleged? Yep, it is in places. When Ruger stabs one of Calder's wounded men in the throat with a hunting knife, the camera lingers on the man's face and the protruding knife. He twitches, spasms, fights for breath, and the knife quivers as he slowly dies. When Frank shoots one of his own men in the head with a shotgun, the camera lingers again, his face a bloody mask, the man fighting for breath, twitching, spasming as he slowly and painfully dies before the audience's eyes. None of what I've covered so far do I have much of a problem with, apart from the quality of the script and Candice Bergen being so poorly utilised. In fact, it's mostly the good stuff. This is what pisses me off about The Hunting Party. I get that it's not going for the ordinary or the expected, but it might have been better if it did. If Calder and his gang had kidnapped Melissa for ransom and Ruger decided not to pay, but instead to hunt down and kill them all, that would have made more narrative sense. Relatable motivation. Calder snatching her to teach him to read is just abjectly stupid, as is assuming that because she walked out of a schoolhouse she is a teacher. I walked out of a hospital a few days ago, no one assumed I was a fucking surgeon. Now I accept that illiterate Western outlaws are maybe not the brightest, but criminals usually have some life skills, planning capacity, instinct and guile regarding their illegal activities. I mean, check the girl out first. She could have been a parent or an opportunistic paedophile for all you know. Just because you stand outside of a zoo doesn't mean you're a fucking elephant, does it? Well, in most cases it doesn't. Then when Frank learns she is who she says she is, i.e. not a teacher but Ruger's wife, he still persists with his demand that she teach him to read, even when his men are getting blown away all around him and he knows it's Ruger's doing the killing. He might have redeemed things a little if he'd acknowledged his error and switched to a ransom plan or fight instead of flight, but no, not to be. Frank protects Melissa from being raped by his men who want to take turns on her. Then, remarkable display of double standards, he rapes her himself. Melissa proceeds to fall in love with her rapist and the two become an item. Ah, that's sweet. Right, I know it's the sexist 70s, but even then, and in what universe does this happen? Only in male fictional constructs based on or around faulty rape mythology. Marnie, for instance, straw dogs to some extent. I don't know of any female writers or authors who have ever entertained such a thing in their work, but if anyone does, clue me in. Women are not secretly asking for it. They do not fall in love traditionally with men who have raped them. Now, if she'd gradually fallen for Frank and he for her, and they'd got it on, yes, that would have stacked up in some way. But what we're left with is a feeling that this just isn't right somehow. Frank starts out with a lot of men. When Ruger and his hunting party begin to take them out from a distance, they run. They remain exposed. They don't hide or hole up and wait for their pursuers to come within range. Frank doesn't send a group of his men to circle around behind their attackers. On the one occasion when something like this is tried, Frank goes it alone and only manages to shoot and kill one of them whilst the others escape. You don't have to be the Duke of Bloody Wellington to work up some basic grasp of strategy when you're under attack. None of the gang are spring chickens. How the hell have they lasted so long as outlaws behaving in this way? And don't get me started on the doomed peaches scene. What? You want to hear about it? Okay then. Melissa rebelliously refuses to eat because Frank told her she would be deprived of food until she consents to teach him to read. Right then, she flounces, I won't eat. Frank then realises if she starves to death, he won't get to learn to read. Seems a good raping hasn't immediately made her more kindly disposed towards him. I'll take time, I dare say. Frank and his second-in-command Doc, Mitchell Ryan, try to tempt her with a glass jar of peaches. The two men slobber and slurp the peaches in an exaggerated fashion, whilst a hungry Melissa looks on, eventually cracking, and she too indulges in the slobbering and slurping of peaches as they all laugh uproariously and fill their fucking faces full of fruit. This is the only attempt at a light-hearted moment in the film, and it's fucking hilarious. You'll laugh your tits off, only you won't, because it isn't. It's not comedic, it's leaden, unfunny, bombs spectacularly, and it just doesn't work. Jarring, out of place, and nauseatingly painful to watch. Doc is gut shot during the watering hole attack. Frank fails to surgically remove the bullet with a spoon. A fucking spoon. But he and his remaining men drag him around on a makeshift stretcher. When he can't bear the pain anymore, he begs Frank to kill him. Frank shoots him multiple times, then chooses this moment in grief and remorse, I suppose, to discard his 6-gun and rifle. So now he's deliberately disarmed himself, which makes perfect sense when you're being chased by a deranged hunter out to shoot you dead. When everyone else is picked off by Ruger and it's just Frank and Melissa left, they head into the barren desert wasteland, as you would, because that's a genius means of escape. Only an insane obsessive psychopath would follow you there. Well, a horse dies, they run out of water. Ruger, an insane obsessive psychopath, catches up on foot, shoots Frank 3 times, Melissa once. They both die spattered with blood. Ruger then collapses beside them, dehydrated and fucked, and dies. Happy endings all round. To recommend, as if it may be enough, there are things I like about the hunting party. The 3 main leads and the way they do the best they can with their roles, the often furious and powerful action, the barely restrained violence and bloodshed, the music, the cinematography, the sheer black hole nihilism of the piece. It doesn't flinch or draw away from being cruel, vicious and unrelenting in its pursuit of delivering a hardcore odyssey of human destruction and unapologetic bleakness. If the message is that each man is the architect of his own downfall and on his descent takes the thing he loves down with him for good measure, then the hunting party says that loud and proud. What I can't forgive, what frustrates me more than anything else, is the glimpses you get of how good this film could have been and how it throws it away by having such an improbable storyline with characters behaving in senseless and incomprehensible ways. Bottom line, you can learn to read at any time, but not if you're dead. Bottom line, your enemy is out of range, so try to draw them closer or outmaneuver them, because although they may have superior firepower, you've got the numbers. Play to your strengths. Bottom line, don't fall in love with your rapist. Oh, of course you wouldn't do that anyway. I mean, you're already married to a sexual sadist who doesn't care if you die. It's a no-brainer. Bottom line, don't throw your guns away if you're in a fight with someone who has a gun. Bottom line, don't imagine a Syrian lifeless sun-blasted desert is a good place to escape to, because it's fucking not. Like, clearly. Bottom line. I think the reviewers of the time were unfairly reactionary in their dislike of the film. The stuff they gagged on most was the violence, the nihilism, the inhumanity, and abhorrent attitudes to women, reducing them to either chattel or willing targets for male sexual abuse. And of course, the way all this was starkly and graphically depicted. The very things I thought worthwhile about it and important to consider and discuss further. But what the hell did I know? Therefore, if you can navigate through the stupid moments, for they are many and it's no picnic, let me tell you, and if you like your westerns raw, bloody and uber fatalistic, heavy on the dark and destructive side, then like me, you may enjoy those factors enshrined within the hunting party. But also like me, you may feel intense simmering annoyance and frustration you may struggle to move beyond. So choose wisely, arse groper, grasshopper, before you join the hunting party, cause it's got nothing to do with jelly ice cream, pretty streamers and cake. Many thanks for your time and attention. If you've got it in you, please do me the honour of hitting like, didn't like, leaving a comment and or subscribing. Or all of the above if your cup of benevolence runneth over. Next one? I don't know yet. Guess we'll both have to just wait and see.